Welcome back to Control Alt Dev. It's mid-January, the Christmas tree's gone, Paul, the chocolates are finished, and if you're like me, you're currently staring at an inbox that seems to have gone absolutely crazy over this break.
Indeed. Happy New Year, everyone. Although looking at the calendar, is it too late to be saying that? I'm still saying that on meetings this week, Sean. So yeah, we're deep in the mid-Jan zone. And honestly, Sean, I need this episode today. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. And why? Is it the long Christmas break or is it been a tough week back, Paul?
I had a lovely 2 weeks. Totally switched off. I made all these promises to myself that I'd do like 90 minutes a day, and I didn't do anything other than cook and eat, I think. So, but yeah, I think it was not I think it was 2 days back into the new year, and I was at a local networking meeting, and you know how it goes. We did all the polite pleasantries of the Happy New Year, and then inevitably the conversation turned on to AI and the future, and very much a doomsday scenario, and so the mood shifted instantly, really.
And let me guess, it wasn't about how exciting the new technology is. It's probably the fear, is it?
I think so, yeah, amongst a lot of people when you start to expand. So yeah, we started fluffing out things that, are happening today versus what's in the pipeline. There was talk of robots walking the streets and, the driverless cars and, where ultimately we as business owners, there's about six of us, where we sit in that whole supply chain. And one question kept circling back was, where does our value actually exist anymore?
That is the existential crisis we talked about previously. I think everybody goes through the experience at some point and repeatedly.
Yeah, exactly that. And it wasn't just this one meeting, it's tallied with like multiple one-to-ones in the first week back. There's a real fear out there on many levels. Like leaders are talking about a looming recession, cutbacks, reprioritization. The general vibe that people have been talking to me about is knuckling down and just trying to survive 2026. And it's the first week.
And just to explain to everyone what one-to-ones are, Paul and I come from a networking background. So one-to-one is where we meet other business peers and we sort of discuss their businesses and what they're looking to do going forward in 2026, where they're going to get their business from, and looking at things like what we're discussing here today.
Spot on, I think as well. Like it's literally how you help and support each other, isn't it? On a face-to-face basis. I mean, obviously you can do one-to-ones virtually, which we do a lot of, but these are like the classic in the pub.
Yeah, absolutely. In the pub, having a coffee, because it's heavy stuff when you combine economic fear with technology that threatens to automate you. It's a perfect storm for anxiety.
Yeah, and I think both me and you have had those, talk about the existential crisis. We've had that in multiple points during 2025 and before that. And I think so, yeah, this is why we're recording this specific episode today, isn't it? We're trying to flip the script a little bit. We're putting a ban on doom and gloom. So that's hopefully the last you should hear in this episode. And today is our positive productivity podcast. We're not going to talk about AI taking your job. We're going to talk about how AI can help you navigate the recession, spot the cutbacks before they happen, and make like 2026 your best year.
I like it. Less fear, more tools to help us achieve in our day-to-day businesses.
Yeah, and we're going to try and change the format as well a little bit in 2026. I mean, Sean have been doing some off podcast conversations, and we're really keen to do a proper show and tell today, opening up financial scorecards and planning agents we actually use, so that even though it's an audio podcast, we can give you some comprehensive show notes with prompts and things. But to kick that off, we're going to have a brand new feature for our show, which is a listener question to start every episode from now on.
Yeah, and this one comes in from Jane Moore. She's got a business in logistics and she emailed me over Christmas and she's asked, with everything moving so fast, how can I use AI to help me make better decisions in my business?
Yeah, and I think, wow, I love this question because I think it highlights the biggest mistake people make. You do not use AI to make the decision. Don't abdicate responsibility. That's your job. That's where the human value exists.
Right. If you ask ChatGPT, what should I do in Jane's situation, you're abdicating responsibility.
Exactly. And I think the nuance here is that you should use AI for critical analysis. You don't ever ask AI for the answer. You ask it to stress test your thinking. I've even explicitly told my tools not to advise me and give opinion, only facts and data. So if the prompt is, should I fire a client? it should be, I'm thinking of firing this client for these three reasons. Act as a cynical business consultant and tell me the reasons I haven't thought of, and what is the financial impact of this decision.
Correct. And that's the distinction. The AI provides the data processing and the risk analysis. You provide the judgment.
Exactly. And actually, Sean, this perfectly leads into a framework that we want to introduce before we get into, the core topics and the news. Because Jane's question about decision making touches on a specific rule that's been used in leadership for, decades. But the AI community has completely adopted it.
Go on then, Paul.
So it's called the 10-80-10 rule. So I was reading a blog on impactful coaching about this recently. And I went to that blog because people were talking about 10-80-10 and I didn't know what it was. So originally it was a delegation tool for managers. So in the classic sense of, pre AI, where we are in 2026, the first 10% of any leader, their job should be to set the vision and to have a definition of done. And then the middle bit, the 80%, is where the team are empowered and they do the heavy lifting and the execution. With the final 10%, the leader comes back to refine, polish, and approve.
Right. So that's the classic management. You don't micromanage the middle, you bookend the process.
Yeah, and that's the big shift here in 2026 is that AI is now the 80%.
I love that, Paul. Let's break that down for listeners because that creates a perfect operating system for using these tools.
Yeah, so let's just take a task. Let's say you're writing a project proposal or you're analysing that P&L we talked about. The first 10% is you. You craft the prompt, you understand what you want to get out of the task, and you give it context. If you rush this part, you get back, garbage in, garbage out. You're losing the game immediately. You have to set the strategy. So the first 10% is the strategy from you, the human.
So then the 80% is the AI. This is the productivity engine. It writes the 2,000 words, it analyzes the spreadsheet, it writes the code, the boilerplate. This is the part that used to take 3 days and now takes 3 minutes.
Precisely. But this is the part that people miss. And this is where the existential crisis comes from. The final 10% is you again.
So the human review, we talked about this with the law firm experiment in our recruitment episode. In episode 11, the AI did the drafting, the 80%, but the human lawyer had to verify the context and the tone.
Spot on. And if you skip the last 10%, that's where people talk about hallucinations. That's where you get, in another podcast, we talked about the Chicago Sun-Times publishing fake book reviews. But if you embrace this rule, it completely removes the fear. You aren't being replaced. You are focusing purely on the first 10%, the strategy, and the last 10% quality control.
Yeah, it effectively turns everyone into an editor in chief rather than a copywriter.
Yeah, so for anyone listening, for every task in 2026, ask yourself, am I doing the 80%? If you are, you're wasting time. Give the 80% to the machine and you own the bookends.
Yeah, and speaking of machines that can handle that 80%, later on in our news wrap, we're going to be talking about a tool that was literally built for this because while we're eating mince pies this Christmas, Meta went shopping.
Yeah, and if you have a question that you'd like us to ponder on a podcast, you can simply email us at podcast@ggapps.co.uk and then we'll feature it in a future episode. So we've answered the listener question about decision making, and that led perfectly into the core framework for today, which was the operating system. But if we're going to ban the doom and gloom and make 2026 our most productive year we've ever had, we need a new operating system.
Yes, and to summarize, the big mindset shift for 2026 is that AI is now the 80%.
And this cures the existential crisis we've talked about many times in the past year. If you're doing any task, if you're doing the middle 80%, you're wasting your time. Your job is the strategy, the first 10%, and the quality control, the last 10%.
Yeah, so to summarize, the last 10% is critical. So, with that framework in mind, strategy, execution, review, let's open the laptop. We promised to show and tell. So, let's break down exactly how we're applying this to plan our 2026, starting with the biggest asset we have, the AI brain.
Yeah, and regular listeners will remember back in episode 4, we talked about the concept of the AI brain. The dream was to create this like knowledge base that understands their entire business. And back then we were trying to do it all in ChatGPT. And whilst it worked, it was quite clunky.
Yeah, we were pasting text in, running out of memory, hitting token limits. But towards the back half of last year, we transitioned our ecosystem to Google. And the game changer for this review phase is Google's Notebook LM.
Yeah, so for the listeners, why explore Notebook LM and not just use ChatGPT?
Because Notebook LM, Paul, is grounded. It doesn't use the whole internet. It only uses the documents you give it. So you can upload up to 300 documents, PDFs, sync with Google Docs, slides, even audio files. So for my 2026 planning, which I've been doing in the last week, I didn't just start with a blank page. I built a 2025 retrospective brain.
Oh, I love it. So let's talk about that workflow, Sean. What did you actually put in there?
So step one, obviously, you've got to have this already previously built, but we exported our Google Calendar from 2025, downloading our project management notes, what we shipped, what we missed. Then we uploaded the digital journal entries. So we fed it all into Notebook LM. And then, and this is the killer feature, we generated an audio overview.
Yeah, and this is the show and tell part that blew my mind. You literally generated a podcast about your own business.
Yeah, about my own business and life as well. So yes, I'm driving to work and I'm listening to two AI hosts, Paul, analyze my year, and it was humbling. They were saying things like, it's interesting that Sean set a goal to launch the new app in Q1. That was our new software app. But his calendar shows he spent 40% of his time on admin tasks instead. So it spotted the disconnect between my intentions and my actions instantly. That is the 80% execution, the AI processing the data so I can do the strategy.
Yeah, and I think there's a key insight here that how invaluable this is. It removes the emotion, doesn't it? And it just gives you the data. And like you said, the time that it would require, or the quiet time and focus and deep work to even do that as a task. I'd imagine most people who've run businesses have never done that task that you've just described, and yet you've been able to do it in a matter of minutes. Get in the car, listen to the output. That's the 80% in action. So yeah, so action point number one for every listener is don't just guess what went wrong in 2025. We're emotional beings, and we'll sway into a different angles of different things. Give it data, upload your data into Notebook LM, or chat will do this as well, and let it tell you the story of your year. I think that is an incredible takeaway and something I haven't actually done, Sean. So there's my first action from the podcast is for me to do it.
So I totally agree, Paul. I mean, the idea, the inspiration of this just came to me because you look at your diary for the whole year. And if you keep your diary entries in there, it really is a powerful thing. Um, we all have these ideas and obviously a business plan. When we create a business plan and what we're going to do for the years ahead, you're looking at where you want to increase the business. And like Paul said, you've got to spend more time really doing the right things correctly and sort of like spend less time on the bits that you can automate. So I just looked at the calendar and saw all these different meetings and things like that. Obviously, all the meeting notes we had that we collected over the year as well. I just fed that into AI, Paul, and that's how it summarized what I was doing and what I was doing incorrectly. And then obviously then with the business plan for 2026, I'm still going through it now. I can sort of try and spend more time where I should be spending it on, which is sales and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it frees up time to work on the high value tasks, which goes back to every episode we talked about, isn't it? Is like, so if you think about extrapolating it out, if you delegate not 80% of it, of the work that you traditionally would say, so in one of the examples you gave, it was something like 3 days down to 3 minutes. It's, well, what do you then spend your time on in that time that's regained? And it's about high value tasks that only you can do, only a human can do, and they still exist. And it's about really maximizing the human connection and the human relationships you talked about in the one-to-ones as well, isn't it? Do more one-to-ones, help and support each other is what we should be doing. I think it all links really, really well together. One thing I was just going to quickly mention, Sean, was I don't know if you did this because you were obviously driving, so you didn't. But it's worth mentioning. The reason we're saying about Notebook LM is not only does it create this podcast, but it's interactive. So you can actually ask questions of the audio to the hosts and it comes back. It's you've got to kind of use it to believe it. And like when you were talking about the podcast that they create, it is insane. It's like it doesn't sound robotic. It's like these two Americans talking to each other. It's like, and then from that, one of the really good planning tools you can get is as you go into Notebook LM, it has the ability within a click to create like a mind map and to create like infographics and to create a video overview. So we've actually started applying this to some of our consultancy. So we're talking honestly and openly to our clients, and we're saying, right, this is our current process for consultancy, and there might be some value in here. So I'm going a bit like into a concept, but so we attend a meeting, like you said, and we use audio transcription for that meeting. So we have our notes. We create a notebook LM, and we call it the prospect's name, and we upload our sources. In that topic, we would talk about something specific to what they're trying to achieve. So we can go and do our own research to find authority web links around that topic. So a recent one was to do with a company that were trying to adopt Scrum. So we went and found like the authoritative Scrum links because it doesn't know about it because it's not internet savvy. So we bring those in. And then what happens is when we come to do the report, we're using Notebook to help us to guide the report. But in those asset creation, I actually sent him a podcast. So he likes running in the morning. So I sent him on WhatsApp. Here's just, it's an AI generated podcast. I've used the data you've given us, but you really need to listen to this. And he was blown away because it was two podcast hosts talking very detailed about his problem, his current state, where he's trying to get to, and what the next milestone looks like. And if you're doing any level of consultancy, I don't know why you wouldn't use, you don't have to use Notebook, why you wouldn't have this like AI brain per prospect, per client, as long as you've got permission to do all the things alongside like use of AI and you've got the permission to do the audio transcription, it is an absolute game changer. And again, 80% of airtime is focused on asking better questions, being better prepared, and being as attentive as we can in the meeting, not fearful of the 6-hour report we've got to write. Does that does that give a bit more context to what we're doing and how we're doing it?
Absolutely. It's impressive and well put together and well said on that. So the review is done. We know what broke. Now, how do we plan the fix? Most people write a prompt in I want to make £1 million or I want to lose 10 kilograms. And then they stare completely at the screen.
Yeah, so this is where we look at switching tools, and we're not doing things standalone in Notebook LM. So we use an out notebook for sources and for reasoning, and that deep research is incredible. But I actually prefer models like Gemini, Claude, or Chat to do a technique called the pre-mortem reverse engineer.
Okay, so walk us through the prompt then, Paul.
Yeah, so using this technique, your typical prompt would you start to type, okay, what the target is. So the target is the 31st of December 2026. We've successfully launched product X. Working backwards, what had to happen in quarter three for that to be true? What then had to happen in quarter two? And what specifically needs to be done in the first sprint of January to make this mathematically possible?
So you're not actually asking how to do it, you're assuming it's done and asking for the breadcrumbs.
Exactly that, and it's Stephen Covey through and through, isn't it? Start with the end in mind. So go to the end of the goal, go and visualize how it's actually manifested, and then it breaks down a scary 12-month goal into a boring Tuesday morning to-do list. And that is how you actually execute.
Okay, but here's the failure point, Paul. We have a business plan, we have a to-do list, but by February the 14th, most people have fallen off the wagon. They've ditched their plans to lose that 10 kilograms. So where do we introduce the 52 chances protocol?
Yeah, again, it's another a key strategy in my opinion. So most businesses wait for an annual review, sometimes quarterly, but that only gives you 1 or 4 chances a year to steady the ship and change course or readjust course. So what we want is we want 52 weekly course corrections. So we've built in our business an accountability agent. So it's simple automation using an A10, and it uses Gemini that acts as a boss that never sleeps.
Okay, so here's the workflow. It's 2 trigger points every single day. So trigger 1 at 8 a.m., the AI messages Green Gorilla apps with WhatsApp or Slack. Good morning, based on your Q1 plan, what are the 3 non-negotiables for today? Trigger 2 at 6 p.m., it then messages you again. Did you do them? If not, why? And be honest.
Yeah, and it sounds simple, but knowing you have to answer to something creates extreme discipline. It's a habit forming. And here's a clever bit: if you reply no 3 days in a row, the AI is programmed to basically challenge you and become more more aggressive, to be honest. So it says, you've missed targets for 3 days running. Is it the wrong goal? What's changed? Is your focus wrong? And it's a bit more dramatic than that, I'll be honest. But
It's that
that's the
digital tool to-do list, isn't it? It's
it's an accountability
yeah,
agent, and so it's like it's there to remind you of the stuff that's important, but everything else in the working day gets in the way of it.
correct. So it forces you to confront your own productivity every evening when you're relaxing, when you sort of relaxing into that sofa, Paul, rather than hiding away from it. So it's a scorecard for your everyday life.
Yeah, and I think when we talked about the 52-week one, there's a bit I've not explained, which is that's the daily habit, the daily agent that's keeping us on track. And then there's a weekly check-in, and that's the one where it really does a deep dive into, okay, what progress have you made this week? What didn't go well? And effectively, what do you need to change? So it's that course correction. So it's almost like a journal, to be honest. Alongside that, it's worth mentioning that we do have a scorecard in the business that's completely automated. It pulls data from Zero. It pulls data from our CRM. It has targets and actuals, all automated. And what it does is it tells us, okay, you need X number of leads to generate X number of sales, to generate X number of average recurring revenue, and it's about 7 points, traffic light, red, green, amber. And then what we built into it was every Sunday morning at 8 a.m., an agent analyzes all of those metrics and then gives us 3 action points for each thing as things to think about. So it's not saying like, oh, this is 100% what you need to do to fix your average recurring revenue. But what it's doing is it's making me then take a step back, time in my diary to look at its suggestions and just start my own, thinking process going on. So rarely will I action what it says, but without that prompt of that analysis and without that kind of these are things you could do, my brain doesn't kick into gear to stop. And it's a bit like with your retrospective on the year. It's doing the things now that make you 1% better next week. And so when you add 1% week on week and you're analyzing what's actually happened, we go back to the data, the facts. Doesn't matter all the emotion that was involved in the week or the meetings that were last minute. The facts are you had these targets to hit this overall 31st December goal, and it's wrong. And then we're going to talk about next how you work out the figures to put into those scorecards, aren't we? So
Well, just before, I'm just going to just go off piste here because I want that
I want that.
prompt. So just because I've been literally this week for the listeners, I've been creating a business plan using ChatGPT, and I've been copying and pasting my financials from Zero.
Yeah.
And you just said there you can automate all that.
Yeah.
Because obviously I've only gone back for 2025, but it would be actually quite useful because we are a SaaS business, so we're a software as a service. So ideally, I want to see that the licenses are going up every year, Paul, consistently at 30%, if not more. So I've been copying and pasting this into ChatGPT, doing it in the right way, creating a prompt, making sure it's fitting into the business plan, etc. But could you help me there? I mean, is it something that what you've built for you could do something to help me rather than having to copy and paste? Because I did like to go back 5 or 6 years if I could.
Yeah. I think, yeah, we could definitely, yeah, 100%. I can show you like what we're doing and stuff. I think where my brain's just jumped to, and apologies for listening if this goes off on a bit, but the way I look at it is bringing it back to the operating system of 10, 80 to 10.
Yeah.
So there was a time not too long ago where GGA knew about the value of a scorecard, but didn't have one. So we weren't doing anything, right? Then there was a time where we had a spreadsheet that was hosted on Google Drive. And when I remembered to, I would go into that spreadsheet and manually update the data pre-AI this was. Then I did exactly where you're at. So then I started using chat to analyze P&Ls to extract the figures, to give me things. And then I would manually populate that spreadsheet. And what was actually happening is I was trying to always optimize the 80% that was my time. It doesn't matter if the 80% is 10 minutes. I'm trying to reduce it down. And so we got to a point where we could see how impactful a scorecard was. We could see that one of the issues was just doing it regularly, error free, but it was value. So then it's you apply again, where's 80% of our time going in this task? And it was in what you're doing. So it's the manual step still. You're going to zero and you're taking it into your chat, and then you're getting it to run a prompt or several prompts. But it doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes, it's still 80% of the overall thing. So that's how we're constantly reevaluating stuff. So when we talk about 80%, yes, there's 80% of a 3-day task, a 3-month task. There's still 80% of a 3-minute task. And so all we did as a team is we said, what's going to drive this business to hit its goals? And a scorecard is a huge part of that. What are the problems with our current scorecard? The targets aren't correct, which leads to everything being red. If everything's being red, there's no value in it. So we used AI to help us to set realistic targets that are seasonal. Our January is not the same as our March, is not the same as our, like August when the summer. So we got AI to help us to identify and analyze real data of past P&Ls for the last 3 years to identify seasonal differences that I didn't even realize existed in my business. So we are a seasonal business, and then set realistic targets based on what we talked about, the end goal. So we start with the end in mind. If we want to hit this, we know our customer makeup, we know this, and we can get down to the single sense of how many new customers we need to bring on a week or a quarter. And that transforms everything. And that's without even changing the average order value. So there's lots of stuff you can change. And this is dynamic. These scorecards that we're talking about, it's just if the listener was to do anything today, it would be I would say use AI in yourself, and this is decision making, but identify 3 core metrics in your business that you have to monitor on a weekly basis. It doesn't matter if it's manual to start with. You need to be monitoring these things because that's what people talk about when they talk about moving the needle. If you're trying to change net profit on your P&L, that's like the last, that's like the output of everything else.
Yep. Yep. I totally agree. I think this is brilliant. I mean, I'm listening because I'm really interested in how I can do that because, as you rightly say, I'm trying to give AI the information that it needs, as you say, to analyze it. So I'm trying to do what you're saying there, but as you say, I'm probably spending 80% of my time doing getting the figures from zero, where actually you can automate that.
And I think on that, what people sometimes overlook in my experience is they'll ask AI for help with a task. Like they'll say, here's my P&L. Can you do something for me? There's a reason why they're asking for help with that. And often it's not a one-off task. It's very rarely a one-off task. So then the logical next question to ask it is, how can I automate this? So in your instance, like me and you, 100% Sean, can sit down and I can show you my scorecard, show you, and he called it Sean card then, scorecard, and show you like all the metrics we track. Because I think there's a lot of synergy and we can go through that in a future podcast and literally go through what we're tracking. But I think it's that next step to go with the 10-80-10 model instilled in your brain. Now you need to go, okay, this is a value, even if it's repeated once a year. Your 2026 retrospective you're going to do at the start of 27, whatever you just did could become a playbook, can be automated. It could be that you don't have to wait to the end of the year, that on the 1st of January, midnight, it's processed it and your podcast is ready for a New Year's Day walk, that sort of thing. So we need to be, how can we use AI to get unemotional analysis of data to make better decisions, but not make the decision? That's the critical distinction. And then we need to always ask it, and now how can I automate this? How can I make this repeatable? And some people will be looking at a task and thinking it's a once a year task, it's a monthly task. You might find that talking to AI, it actually suggests that you should be doing this weekly or daily. And that's where, you imagine a business that's run on numbers and they're predictable numbers, and you have a growth engine then, you know what you need to do. And everything extrapolates out of it. So going back to the accountability agent, if it understands your numbers you're trying to achieve, and it also understands the gap on a weekly basis as to what you're not achieving, it can better advise you because it's got context. And this is the AI brain. So we're trying to, in this episode, I know it's a lot, but we're trying to interlink everything to say a successful business or project, or like you said, Sean, a life hack or a habit. I'm doing a lot of classic habit changes at the moment in January, and it's like tracking. It's as simple as a tracker. It's as simple as setting clocks on your reminders on your phone clock to say, this time do this thing. And people, a good business, in my opinion, is one that is formed on habits, just like a good person is good habits. And there's bad habits in business, and a bad habit in business is not bothering to retrospectively reflect on what happened.
And that's it.
I consider
Yeah.
that really bad habit.
And you should all read Atomic Habits, by the way. That's a fantastic book.
James
Plug there.
Clear, yeah. Little plug there. We'll see if we get some commission. I'm sure he's an avid listener. Should we get back on topic,
Yeah,
Sean?
let's get back on topic. The money pool.
Yeah, I said finally, we've got to talk about money, haven't we? Because all of these things need funding. Profit is not a dirty word. Profit is a way to innovate. Profit is a way to invest in your technology and your staff. So the big questions we've had from business owners lately is, how can AI actually help me with financial planning?
And the short answer is yes, massively. AI isn't just about writing content, it's also brilliant at forecasting, analyzing, and identifying patterns that humans might miss. So, as you've heard me talk about there, Paul, we're experimenting with ChatGPT. I've been uploading my Excel documents, which sounds like I can probably do something with Paul here to automate the zero process. So I'm now trying to upload my monthly revenue and costs and asking AI to generate a 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year financial projection in minutes.
Yeah, and I guess at this point we're going to segue into, so you've built a what if simulator aspect, Sean. So, and to me that is the really powerful bit. So, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so it's not replacing my accountant. It's just a fantastic simulator. You can say, what if we increase our ad spend by 20%? Obviously, what happens if we can increase our SaaS licenses by 30%? What happens to cash flow if we lose our biggest client next month? And that's a particularly big one, Paul. So
Yep.
again, I've been getting that information from Zero, which again, you might be able to help me with, just seeing what would happen, because it has happened. We did actually lose one of our largest clients in 2025 for no other reason than he simply was told to go to a different software system because they're American based. So it wasn't actually something he wanted to do. It was almost like he had to do it. But as a result, we lost £50,000 off the balance sheet.
Yeah, so it's like having a digital financial system that never gets tired of running scenarios, is what you're saying. I think here's a good time to mention the profit first method. So I think we've touched on this in the past, but I know a lot of people who employ it. So you can literally ask AI to review a profit and loss statement, run an analysis on that profit and loss statement, and then benchmark your operating expenses against industry standards for your insert industry, so SaaS company, and ask it where you're overspending. So you're turning raw data into a strategy without needing a finance degree. And just to segue back to profit first, it's by Mike McAllowitz, and basically it recommends percentages of, like, to generate this amount of profit, this is what your OPEX percentage should be. And so it's a really good way to look at what a healthy profit first business looks like. And what I discovered, in total honesty, is my OPEX is through the roof in terms of percentage of turnover. And so there's a real thing there to go, well, you either increase the turnover or you look at your OPEX. You do both in it all instance, but you can use it to benchmark your numbers, because nobody knows. I say nobody knows, that's a bland statement, but I was with somebody the other day doing exactly this, and you know, I asked them in their industry what good net profit looks like, and they don't know. So it was like, well, why don't you go to AI and the internet course and do that research piece so you know whether your net profit is actually exceptional or really bad? Because to me, it was amazing, but I have no idea what his industry average is. So there's no point me saying that's an amazing net profit. I'm not in your industry. So I think benchmarking and analysis is something again that people don't necessarily do unless they're in big corporates.
Yeah, and it also helps with funding applications. So you can get AI to structure your cash flow summaries, your executive statements, even grant application drafts based on your numbers.
Yeah, and all of this, we're trying to link it back deliberately, but it goes back to the 10-80-10 rule, doesn't it? So the most important thing is you got to feed it clean data. If your bookkeeping is a mess, your receipts are a mess, the AI will just give you polished nonsense. So garbage in, garbage out is always the fear. And that's why we suggest using AI as a second opinion, not the final word. Always combine it with your accountant's expertise, but at least you can put something in front of your accountant, as this is what I've been working on, and get some real expert feedback.
Yeah, so let's wrap this up. Here is the stack for 2026 reset. So we're using Notebook LM to review the past. That's our AI brain. Reverse engineering to plan the future. That's the strategy. The agent to hold you accountable daily, the boss. And the simulator to stress test your finances, the CFO.
Brilliantly put, Sean. So, yeah, it's about being proactive instead of reactive. It's about turning your data into direction. If you do just one of these things, even just play with Notebook LM and review it, you're already 90% ahead of the market.
So we want to see your results. If you build a scorecard or an agent based on this show, this podcast, screenshot it and send it to us. We'll verify it in our final 10%.
So that is the protocol. You have the Notebook LM brain, the accountability agent, and the financial simulator. And if you're sitting there thinking, Paul, this sounds like a lot of effort, I need to share the news that dropped while we were all eating our turkeys. Because if you think the world is slowing down for 2026, you're very much mistaken.
Yeah, the headlines over the break were relentless. We've seen a massive consolidation in agents, a total U-turn on privacy in Europe, and cars are officially becoming living organisms.
Yeah, and let's start with the one that validates everything we've just talked about regarding agents, and that's Meta has acquired Manus.
This dropped on December the 29th for those who missed it. Manus isn't just another chatbot, it's a general AI agent. Their whole pitch is less structure, more intelligence. They don't just chat, they execute. Since they launched, they powered over 80 million virtual computers and have processed 147 trillion tokens.
Yeah, and this is a validation of the agent feature where we predicted. Manus is an execution layer. It browses the web, it uses apps, it does the hard work, and now it sits inside the Zuckerberg empire.
Exactly. Imagine the accountability agent we just described in our show and tell, but native inside WhatsApp or Instagram. Manus creates scalable, reliable systems that carry out end-to-end work. The fact that Meta bought them proves that 2026 isn't about chatting with AI anymore, it's about handing off the keys.
Speaking of handing off the keys, this brings up the next story, because Nvidia isn't just about building chips anymore, they're effectively building digital drivers.
Yeah, this is huge for the automotive world. Nvidia has just debuted its full drive AV software in the new Mercedes-Benz CLA.
Now, we've all heard this for years, so why is this any different?
Because this is end-to-end AI. Usually self-driving cars rely on hard-coded rules. If red light, then stop. Nvidia is using deep learning models that interpret traffic holistically. They call it physical AI. The car creates a digital twin of its environment and makes human-like decisions in complex urban spaces, not just motorways.
Yeah, and I like the quote from Nvidia's VP, Ali Khani. He says that this tech turns every car into a livable learning machine. It implies the car you buy in January 2026 will be smarter by December 2026 because of the over-the-air updates. It validates the continuous improvement theme we've been talking about.
And it's powered by a digital factory. They use NVIDIA Omniverse to simulate billions of miles of driving before the car even hits the road. It's the ultimate example of the 10-80-10 rule. The AI did 80% of the testing in a virtual world.
So what I want to know is, will it still sit in the middle lane? if that's what it is. If it adopts what other road users do, I think it's screwed.
Do you know, I was thinking exactly the same thing.
But there's always a but, isn't there, in the news? So while Meta is building agents and Nvidia is building robot cars, the regulators in Europe are panicking. We've got a major news story about the EU is preparing to roll back parts of its GDPR policy.
And this is a digital omnibus for a decade. Europe has been the global standard for privacy, but a report by the former Italian PM Mario Draghi basically warned that these complex laws are killing innovation. Europe is losing the AI race to the US and China, and they know it.
Yeah, so what exactly are they changing? Because this sounds quite dramatic.
So it is. Its leaked draft suggests they are creating a legitimate interest exception. This would allow tech companies to process personal data, including some sensitive data for AI training without explicit consent. Basically, if you're a business, you might not need to ask users for permission to train your models on that data anymore.
So that's a massive pivot, isn't it? And we're moving away from an opt-in culture, the cookie banner fatigue, to an opt-out culture.
Yeah, privacy groups like NOYB are calling it Trumpian lawmaking. They warn it allows high-risk AI systems to process massive amounts of European data legally. But from a business perspective, the EU Commission feels they have no choice. If they don't loosen the rules, Europe becomes an AI backwater.
Wow, and just to finish the news on a typically cheerful note, while the EU is loosening rules to speed things up, we have a leading research from the UK's own agency saying we need to slow down.
Yeah, so David Dalrymple from ARIA, the Advanced Research and Innovation Agency, he gave a stark warning to The Guardian this week, saying the world may not have time to prepare for these risks.
Yeah, he predicts that by late 2026, AI systems will automate the equivalent of a full day of R&D work. Basically, the AI will start doing the science for us. His concern is that we're sleepwalking into a transition where we lose control of our critical infrastructure.
So it brings a full circle. Meta is bringing the agents, Nvidia is giving them physical bodies, the EU is removing the red tape, and the safety experts are saying, wait a minute.
Thank you. It's the perfect storm, and it's exactly what you need to plan for this year. You cannot drift through 2026 while this level of change is happening around you.
So let's bring it back to the desk, Paul. We've covered a lot today.
Yeah. So we started with a listener question about decision making. Remember, you are the strategist. You're the critic, not the creator. Then we broke down the 10-80-10 rule, where you own the strategy. The AI does 80% of the work, but you ultimately own the quality control and the output.
We opened up the laptop and we showed you the best year ever protocol. Number one was the Notebook LM to review your 25 data. Reverse engineering prompts to set your 2026 milestones was number two. Number three was the accountability agent to nag you every day at 6 p.m, or it does for Paul. And four, the financial simulator to stress test your cash flow.
Finally, we looked at the news, Manus, Nvidia, and the EU, which proves that speed is the only currency that matters right now.
So we want to know how you get on. If you build that boss agent like Paul has, or if you run your P&L through ChatGPT, send us that screenshot. We want to see the results.
And we need your questions. We're keeping this listener question slot for every episode in 2026. So if you're struggling with a specific tool, or if you're worried about privacy, or you just want to know how to automate a boring part of your job, just ask us.
Yeah, you can message us on LinkedIn. We do AI consultancy, so that's something to mention. So certainly do message us about that. Do search for Control Alt Dev or email the show directly. We read absolutely everything.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in. Don't let 2026 happen to you. Go out and architect it.
We'll see you next week.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.